Did you hear?
Hear what?
That Codex that came out is really broken, and everyone's really upset about it.
Isn't that every Codex? Almost.
I want to know how you're going to handle it, though.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. I don't care.
Hey guys, welcome to another Lords of War Games and Hobbies video. I'm Chris, this is Jay, and we do these sorts of silly industry talk videos a few times a week. If you're new here, Jay and I have been in the tabletop business of selling toy soldiers for a couple decades, and we've been doing the hobby for maybe even longer, close to 30 years now.
Way too long.
Yeah. Way too long.
Seen too much.
Seen a few things.
Yeah.
In our time.
Yeah.
So we want to just kind of this is another Patreon question. So shout out if you're not on the Patreon or whatever people want to say, you can get on there, and that's how we interact with you guys the most. And we take questions about what sorts of topics you want to see and talk about. So get on there if you haven't seen it already. So what do you think? So you're obviously not rattled by that question, eh? It is kind of funny because your reaction is sort of like immediately like it's one of those things when you've been doing this for so long, you have seen these trends that are repeated over time and time again, and for some people that have only been in the hobby maybe like 12 months, 2 years, 3 years, even 5 years, some of these things that you're experiencing may feel like new to you or first time things.
Sure.
But let me tell you, they are not new.
No.
And they have been happening forever.
No, if we go back to, let's say, the decade between my 20s and 30s when I maybe not. When did I play the most games?
Yeah.
Probably late teens to mid 20s, or maybe I was playing, very frequent games, several games a week, and we would go to more events and play just be playing a lot. So yeah, that was a topic that was kind of more relevant or something that we cared about more. Where we'd be like, oh, this new book came out and it's really strong. And you're like, so you were either like excited because you were like, I could do that army, and you wanted to just do it right away and to start just winning games, or you were like, well, that's really annoying because I like playing X army right now, and it's unfair that these guys are getting all this stuff that I'm not getting or something.
The funny thing about, I'm glad you brought up that time, because like the funny thing about that era, 20 years ago, almost 15, we'll say 15, 20 years ago, right? Mm-hmm. Is that like you were very much aware that you were complaining into the ether.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so it was still very much a part of the culture to be like, oh yeah, we all kind of acknowledge that book is like kind of busted and strong, and those characters are good, and like these armies kind of suck a little bit or whatever.
Right.
And it was just kind of like sort of common knowledge if you played the game a lot. There wasn't huge, like YouTube obviously wasn't a huge thing at that point. There were sort of like forums and stuff you could go to talk about, but like there were, everyone wasn't online kind of like at that point, right? So these are more just like little cultural things that kind of built up around stores, almost like a little zeitgeist or whatever.
Yeah, there was that. I think there's a couple of things. So there was that. So there's the like top discussion of like where you are at your life and how much you play the game and how much, or even if you're older than that and you just play a lot, that's fair. Games Workshop specifically, but most miniature games with a meta that matters go through the cycles, and it is very much like either you join them or either you join the strong army team or you don't. Like you kind of have to go with the flow. Like it's very hard to just have one army forever and always do well with that army. There's a few guys over the years that I've come across that are just like Caleb Walters in the U.S., who's just Mr. Zinch forever, and he just continuing to do.
Well, he's kind of lucky too in the way.
I mean, Disciples Zinch is rarely a bad army.
It's like picking hitting the lottery or whatever.
It is still a bit of a higher skill army in general. It is. But it's this is a gentleman who just continued edition after edition win major events.
Such a nice guy too.
He's very nice.
Such a nice dude.
Shout out to Caleb.
Like the Walter brothers.
Yeah, his brother Scooter. And so that's something to keep in mind. And then you have like also I think it's maybe changed a bit. Like the gaming I'm talking about that I did more frequently, it was a lot of Warhammer Fantasy, 8th edition, 7th edition. And I think, and maybe you see it in, well, maybe not. Old World is a little bit of a different beast, but in those times, like, I don't know, I feel like the differences between the worst army and the best army weren't as significant. Some armies were just very strong, sure, but I think the way the game worked is it was more on like deployment and some of your army construction. Like you could take like a quote poor army, and like I think you were a good example of this because you played Tomb Kings in this era when they were still, up until, I mean, for a long time historically they were panned as not a very good army. And that was, people like to use that as an excuse why it didn't sell well and why GW killed them in the first place, like, etc. And it was like, I remember distinctly you were very like, this army, you were reading the book and be like, this is not a bad army. And you found builds that were like, surprised people.
Yeah.
And I remember we were playing a lot of games just in general, like practice games and all these things. And I would, and so I would read the book too in a bit and be like, yeah, this is like very good. And I couldn't understand that like people being like, maybe it didn't have some synergies and power that a Warriors of Chaos army had that was like very obvious, or a High Elf army that had very, Book of Hoth and things like that, where you're like, oh yeah, you just 6 dice a spell and win the game. Like maybe it didn't do that.
Yeah.
But, things like marching 2 War Sphinxes up and dropping 2 templates on a unit, I don't even know if that's that sneaky. It's like pretty powerful. And then you combo an enfeebling foe spell or something.
Lower their toughness to 1 or whatever. And you just nuke a whole unit.
You just nuke a unit without even charging or fighting, right?
Yeah,
so
it was good, really good.
So I found that that was a time where you could kind of like have a favorite army and make a good build and still like kind of do well. I feel like in modern AOS and 40K, it's like that it's much different. Like you have to be a lot more dedicated to the craft, and I don't know if every army can just like compete on, like, I think or maybe they can in the right hands, but it's I feel like there's a bigger chasm, even though the graphs and metrics show this like I think the 10% difference between the worst. I don't know though. I find it's like much more difficult to routinely win against. When you have a mid-tier army against the high, with equal player skill level, it's like kind of.
I think that's the thing that I go to. Like for me, I definitely feel like the average person who plays like a lot of games is probably way more into like the game part of it. Like I feel like, I don't hate to say like educated, but like the average gamer that's playing 40K now, I feel like they're way more educated on the game now than maybe 15 years ago you had to be. So like the player skill level I think has gotten a little higher on average, which I think maybe that magnifies the differences between the army books then, because if like people are generally a bit more on the same skill level, and if the games are written kind of in a way that like plays into that a little bit, where like there might be a lot of rules, but I think there's less like ambiguity in the rules like there used to be, I think, as well. So I think the differences like are magnified because like maybe the 2 codexes being like only 10% different now in terms of relative power level. Maybe that's magnified quite a bit if both players are both skilled or whatever. I don't know. I'm just kind of shooting. But the big difference we can definitely agree on in these 2 eras is that when someone's complaining about how things are, 15, 20 years ago, you knew that no one was listening.
Nope. No.
And so you were just kind of like doing the water cooler thing with your buddies, being like, man, doesn't it suck that this is happening or whatever?
Yeah.
And wouldn't it be cool if Wood Elves could do this or whatever? Now when people complain, there's like, it's not that there's no, like there's obviously people listening. May not be listening to you specifically, but they're listening in general. They're combing the tournament data for results. They're making objective changes based on like what they're seeing. There's constant changes and updates in the game. So like your complaints kind of like, it's like almost more valid to complain now.
Oh yeah.
Like I'm not saying it's encouraged, but like it kind of is encouraged. Like
Games Workshop has bent the knee several times.
The Votan thing reminded me by that.
Yeah. They have made snap pre-Codex release change. Actually, that's kind of a routine thing now, which is kind of ridiculous. But where they'll in that period when between the launch box and the general Codex release, they will make adjustments to certain things, and so obviously the which only feeds the general negativity about the release cycle and the frequency of it. Thank God for them that the model releases are so incredible.
Oh
right
yeah,
now,
I mean that's
that
definitely
it seems to, because I think if they were purely a game and rules company, people would probably drop them ages ago. But they continue to make the best minis. So
yeah, and I'm just thinking like people. I don't know. My thought. I kind of lost.
I had killed your thought.
That's okay. That's okay. Yeah. It'll come back.
Well, yeah. So then that kind of feeds into the next thing about the now you have the cycle too. So I think the other part of my, I don't care answer is going to be that, so what? It's going to be, if it is very powerful, it's going to be that way for probably a relatively short time. I don't know, like whatever it is, it's they'll either patch or amend, or another book will come out, or the edition will just roll over because of this 3-year cycle we're in. It's gone are the days that you had to wait 5+ years for a new book and a new meta for your book. Now the flip side is if you have a rubbish book, then you also don't necessarily have to wait that long. But yeah, when people tell me a rule set is broken, I'm like, my response is always, okay, so enjoy it right now. Play lots of games with it because it will change. Yeah. It always does.
Yeah.
As of the last little while. So you just, if your army's busted, cool. Be busted. Go off and go to the tournaments. Smash some players, whatever we call it, smooth brain.
Smooth brain, baby.
Yeah, smooth brain. It's nice, So
let's turn the focus now towards us, like bring it back on the retailer then. So we've just talked about how, like, sort of like the culture around like the consumer, how they are interacting with the games based on how they're perceived, how they perceive the rules to be stronger or weaker. How does that affect sales of things? How does that affect how we, as business owners, handle those customer interactions? Or like, how do we handle the product? Do we handle it any differently, or do we
It's funny. I mean, we probably would harness it even better if we studied the game even more, played more, especially 40K. I think Carson and I are both guilty of not playing very much or spending enough time reading about it. There's probably a 10 or 20% of, let's just say 20%, it's probably less, but whatever, of people that I could probably make a few extra bucks off just based on that. If I had a more encyclopedic knowledge of of what's going on in a new book, and if it's really strong, or I could be like, yeah, you need 4 boxes of these, and then you just rinse your friends, right? So there is a little bit of that you can harness, but I don't know. I think I want to say most of our, case in point, upcoming box in a couple weeks is the Slaanesh launch box. That box does not need. It could have no rules in it. It wouldn't matter. Mm-hmm. It does not matter with the rules. They could be terrible. They could be busted. They could be not included. People are lining up to buy that.
They're gonna collect Slaanesh armies, like, because they want to. Yeah.
That is like a release that is rules agnostic. Does not matter.
Yeah.
What is gonna happen.
Yep.
And I find a lot of their releases lately, miniature-wise, are like that. And like I mentioned just a bit earlier, just a second ago, about like how, if they were purely a rules company, then it would be a different story. But the minis are what are driving this demand. Like most people I sell launch boxes to the whole launch box is predicated on the get everything in one shot and save a few bucks for the guys that are like, yeah, I'm into they're already super fans of that thing. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So
also you kind of mentioned earlier how it's sort of like a weird way for Games Workshop to beta test the rules.
Yes,
like they put it out there for like the people that really want it. People like go through it, comb through it, and maybe find the things that are
the other thing the other release recently was all these Eldar things. Again, I had people telling me they want all the aspects, all the Phoenix Lords before any rules were divulged at all. I mean, looks like the book's pretty strong. Just reading a few
Oh
data
my god,
sheets.
yeah. But it's not the units you might think.
No, but
Right? Like people weren't lining up to buy Warwalkers.
No.
They're phenomenal.
should
They're like
be.
one of the
Yeah.
best units
Yeah.
in the book,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Firebenders, same thing.
When they
like,
all of
they're
a sudden
incredible.
take something that they've been selling in singles and put them in twos for some reason,
Yeah.
you're like, and of course all the Phoenix Lords are great, but like the sales there, like are people like it the beautiful, but the combo of the FOMO because it's going to sell out. And wanting to do these like Biel-Tan armies or just the nostalgia thing that people are like, I need it. And so I don't know. I think it does help sales of some things. I think we've seen it with the classic example is the web order or the extended catalog items that have been no one's cared about for a while, and then all of a sudden you get 2, 3, 4 people in a row being like, I need to order this, I need to order this.
Yeah.
Can you special order it? It's out of stock. No one has it on the shelf. And you're like, no one has it on the shelf because it hasn't been relevant for 5-10 years now. And they just sneakily wrote one good rule for it, and now everyone needs it.
I think I found like just historically, like, I mean, you could argue two sides to this exact same point I'm going to make, but like, I've always felt like the rules never really hinder too much the sales, but they always just kind of help like juice them a little bit more.
Yeah.
You know, like
Sure.
which I guess you could argue is like if the rules aren't amazing or great or interesting, then that is hindering the sales because they could have made more money. So like I said, you could argue it two ways, right?
Yeah.
But it does feel like the cream on top of the cupcake a little bit. You know?
So I think to your point and a bit of the opposite example recently, although I mean, this is proof of concept a bit. We purposely didn't order a crazy amount. I think we got like 5 or 4 Good Mob boxes.
Yeah.
And there's an example of content creators poo-pooing the book instantly. And
everyone who came in to talk about it was like, "Oh, they're terrible."
They're terrible. I'm like, you haven't read the book, but fair enough. Someone did.
Someone read it, yeah.
And that's fine. I'm okay with like defaulting to some. That's what the internet's for, to be honest. And okay, so the book is perceived to be not great, weak. So yeah, it is going to. It's funny, like the busted rules don't necessarily sell a ton more models, but poor rules definitely hurt sales a bit. You can definitely see some, especially on an army that I would consider a bit niche. Yeah. It's a Goblin, Wolf, and Chariot army box, or that's the highlight of this iteration of Gloomspite. The Gloomspite army as a whole is one of the coolest armies they have, but you combo that and I love the new Goblin Wolf models and all that, but like it's like a weird combination of like not a lot of minis in a box because they're more like cavalry and larger minis, and they're also goblins, so they're not a lot of points.
Yeah.
And then comboed with like, oh, the book is perceived to be weak, so maybe if they wrote a busted book, like maybe they would have sold a few more copies there. That like it definitely could have helped. But again, it always comes back to the if you like the faction in general, just collect it anyway because it swings back around. And I'm sure at some point there will be Goblin Wolf Chariot armies sometime in the future, and they'll be like a meta army or doing well. So, and then when you go to buy them, they'll be sold out or gone. Or
exactly.
Not,
and I think like it just speaks to like our general philosophy of just like been doing this for so long, and I think we tend to take a longer view of things with our customers as well. As like you spoke to earlier about like we could definitely be those people that like, oh, this person's really into Necrons right now, I'm gonna like literally sell them a pile of Necrons, like and then I'm gonna talk to them about how busted Immortals are, and I'm gonna be like, okay, you need this and this, and like that might work out okay, but also one thing that could happen is that person might have something change in 3 months to their list, and then now they're only using half, like, and it can leave a bad taste, right? And maybe they think negatively about how we interacted with them. So we tend to take more of a long view and say, like, look, changes, especially in today's era of changes is just a normal thing that we all have to deal with now in the hobby, especially if you're in the Games Workshop hobby. Specifically, 40K and AOS have the most changes per year.
Yep.
CPY, changes per year.
Yeah, that'll be a column. Yeah, CPY rating.
And I think taking the long view of like, look, what's better is like you said, I think helping people develop a healthy relationship with their hobby.
Yeah.
What do you want to get out of it? cool. You want to be like a competitive player. Okay, you're kind of either committing to like doing the like buying lots of things and jumping around all the time, and accepting that like because you can't blame anyone when this happens because we know ahead of time what's going to happen, that like you're going to be punished quite frequently for that, or you stick to maybe 1 or 2 collections and you kind of like grow those slowly, and you add units that like aren't competitive because like maybe one day you might need to pull them out of the woodwork painted and stuff like that, right? So but I think also like as we get older, we kind of like soften as well. Like we don't play the hard competitive stuff as hard as we used to. And
you get kind of chewed out through the ringer, or whatever you want to call it. Like, and this goes back to kind of the beginning of the video when you're talking about younger people that haven't, more initiate collectors or into the hobby, that they haven't been through the cycle. And this is why you've heard me talk about events and competitive gaming, and the one pitfall of it in general is that, especially Warhammer or wargaming in general, is the reward is so small that you better love just playing games and the change, because you are going to go through this ringer of tournaments and traveling and playing, and then the edition's going to change, or the way you play the army is going to change fundamentally, and you're going to feel this feeling of loss. Like, I've done all this and then I have nothing to show for it. It's kind of there's a bit of that, which is different if you're also love the painting and building. Then you always have the army and the journey of doing that, which is why I have so many beloved mid to low tier armies that I'm still very fond of, despite their disappointing tabletop results, because I love painting them.
Shout out Sylvaneth.
Shout out. Well, I'm also guilty of not. They've had eras recently where they've been good, and I just haven't updated them. But anyway, so it is I keep preaching. It is. I mean, competitive gaming is fun. It's fun because, like, well, at least for us, it's like a thing to do with your friends, and the meeting the people. I like seeing the same people that there's usually like a population of gamers that you will see often, and they're usually also fun to play against and whatever. But if you get sucked into the cycle of the game thing, you could definitely, I could see people just being like, I'm done, this is just they soak so much time and energy, and then what do you, I don't know, get some plaques, some store credit, I don't know.
Yeah, hopefully like us, you got to
BCP rating.
It's the friends you made along the way.
Yeah,
so,
honestly,
you have some lads, you have some good memories.
It has to be about that.
It has to be about the other stuff. I think it's funny for the more we talk about it, it's about like everything except the games after you're done with it, right? Like I have my collection of probably like favorite game moments, but like it's more about the people you play with and the people you meet, and like the journey of like getting ready to go to tournaments with your friends. And I mean, that's always been my favorite part.
Yeah. Well, it's and again, you probably gathered, like, when you, I guess, play as much as, or the amount of service time that we've accrued in playing games, that it does get, over the years, you have to find new angles and ways, because you start, you've explored that world so much already. It's like, what do you, I love playing new campaigns of Total War as well, but like, maybe maybe I'm not doing, one every month anymore. You know what I mean? Like, maybe it's like once a year now, like, because it's not I'm not opening anything new here.
No,
like,
exactly
it's
right.
Like, okay,
why is this band I love making music that doesn't sound like it used to sound?
Music is another.
It's like,
example.
You're like, it's because they're bored.
Sure.
They're bored of like how
they have to do something else.
Something different, right? Like, you got to mix it up, right?
They're not going to just keep regurgitating the same album or whatever. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, cycling back to the beginning, I don't think, like, it's funny to say this, but like Codex being quote unquote broken, a big change Games Workshop makes to the rules that people don't like, ultimately, like, I think we're a bit of a calming influence on that, because like we don't like eat, like we don't like breathe the internet through our mouths or whatever.
Yeah, right.
So I think that helps a lot with like our stores, like to be that positive, calming influence, being like, no, look, man, I've seen this happen a million times. It's not that big a deal.
Yeah.
And also, do you still like doing this?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Do you still like doing this? I still like doing this.
It's always a fundamental question.
Cool.
Do you even like this?
Do you even like this? No. Okay, maybe it's not for you anymore. Maybe it's just the game. Maybe you need to change games. Maybe right.
Yeah.
So ultimately, like, I don't think we're losing a lot of customers over stuff like that. Not people that weren't going to leave anyways, probably. So yeah,
No.
we solved it.
Solved it again.
Got a little dirty in garbage time there, but you know. We hope you guys enjoyed this chat. If you liked it, give us a like and a subscribe so you can see more chats like this coming up through the week. And like we said before, check us out on Patreon, and you can throw us a tip if you want to, or you can join for free just so you get updates on there. We are going to be expanding our content on there this year. We made some investments this week, which we may talk about soon too. You know, we're putting that money back in the channel basically. So, thanks so much, guys. We appreciate it. Take care.
Bye.